Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the podcast for parents who are raising children with challenging behaviors who are difficult to connect with. I'm just so glad that you are here hanging out with me. My hope is that through this podcast that you connect and learn some key strategies that you can use to start shifting things at home, because I know I didn't have these tools when my son was younger and things were so challenging, and I just felt really stuck. Honestly, I felt stuck. I felt ready to give up. And so my hope is that you don't feel that way anymore. My hope is that by really taking the things that we talk about here, that you start implementing them and see how they work. Share your feedback with me. Let me help you through this. And I share this at the end, but if you are really stuck and need some help, that is what I do. I love helping parents who feel like they are out of options. And so that's actually what a topic that I wanted to talk about today is, why can it be that as a parent we can feel so capable, so prepared, so equipped to handle even the most challenging behaviors, yet feel like we're just totally failing with our kid? I know this is exactly how it was for me. I shared during our introduction that I felt so incredibly prepared to be a foster and adoptive parent. I had at that point spent many, many years working in the autism field, using specific behavior management strategies. Man, I could set up behavior intervention strategies in my sleep, I felt like. And for my daughter, it was easy. Not to say that her behaviors were either, right? She had her own things that she was working through, but I didn't struggle with any of it. I felt as a mom like I had so many tools in my tool belt and I could keep my calm and pull them out whenever I needed. But then when it came to my son, I had more experience, I had more training, I had more certifications, an extra degree, and at that point had been licensed as a foster parent. And as behaviors continued with my son, I didn't know what to do. I felt like a total loss and honestly, such a failure as a parent. I felt like not only was I letting myself down, I was really letting my son down. You know, when we go into being a foster parent or an adoptive parent, it's a whole special level of a promise that we make to our kids. We promise to give them a home that is loving and safe and compassionate and understanding. We promise to be the very best parents that we can be, knowing that our kids come from a challenging situation. Even in the best circumstances, we know that our kids come from a challenging situation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be with us. And so, as a foster parent or an adoptive parent, when we feel like we're failing, it almost feels tenfold. At least that's how it felt to me. I felt like I don't even know other words for it, but I feel like if you were a well-trained surgeon or a builder, or you were just such a specialist in your field, and then you approach this patient that you have no idea how to perform surgery on them. You have or you're trying and it's just not working. Or as a builder that the science that you know about building, the math you know about building just isn't working. That's how it felt to me. At that time, I didn't feel like an expert. I felt like I was an expert perhaps in the autism field, and I felt like I was a pretty good mom. But then when it came to my son, I just I didn't. I didn't feel capable. I didn't feel confident. I really felt like I was failing. And I would have outside feedback telling me that I was doing all the right things. Outside feedback telling me that there's nothing more I could possibly be doing to change things in my home. I had outside feedback telling me that there was nothing left to do and that I just had to ride it out. This is the feedback that I got back as mom. And in my heart, it didn't feel right. In my heart, I felt like if I could just try a little bit harder, if I could just get my son into one more intervention, maybe this would be the magic fix. I learned later, a couple years later, so now a couple years ago, I learned that scoop is that in society, we are um, conditioned or raised or taught to think about life in a certain way. We're taught to think that if we just do more, if we just try harder, then we can have a situation that we want and then we can feel happy. My coach calls it the do, have, be. That if we can just do more, we can have what we want, we can be happy or content or fulfilled or whatever it is that we're looking for. But the truth is, we've got it all wrong. As mom, I was trying to do. I was trying to do more intervention, do more um, strictness and rules in my home, which I despised that that's how our home became. But I couldn't see it any other way. But I just kept doing in hopes that at some point we could have some peace so that I could be happy. I kept trying the do, have, be strategy, and it wasn't working at all because it can't. That's right. It can't work because that isn't how it works in real life. The way that it works in real life, we're not taught this, but the way that it works in real life is that we first have to be in match of what we are trying to achieve. If we want to be happy, we have to be happy now. If we want to be connected with our kids, we have to be connected now. We can't wait for the behaviors to stop. We have to make a decision that that's something that matters enough to us now. And so that first step is be. We have to be. So, in thinking about behaviors and dealing with the behaviors and so desperately trying to fix behaviors by more therapy, more intervention, more school involvement, more, that isn't what my son needed. He needed me to be the mom who loved him unconditionally. He needed me to be the mom who was happy and content with the way things are. He needed me to be the mom who didn't change the way that I was responding to him, even when he was having the very hardest of days. He needed me to be happy so that I would take the right action. He needed me to be so that I would do, so that then eventually we could have a great relationship. He needed me to be happy, confident with my skills. He needed me to be unconditionally loving him so that I could show up for him with the same compassion, no matter what kind of day he was having. And I know where I struggled so much with that was that oftentimes his behaviors didn't seem to match what I knew was going on inside. But for example, when our children who've experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, oftentimes they'll engage in just such unsettling behaviors that surely on the surface do not look like they are at all related to trauma or disrupted attachment, but they are. And so my son needed me to be happy so that I could show up for him with unconditional love, so that we could have the relationship that we both wanted to have. He needed me to be a certain way so I could do or take action that matched that so that we could have a great relationship. So when I look back about that question about how could I possibly be so intelligent, so well trained, so experienced, so certified, so many certifications, how could I have all of that in my tool belt and still feel like I was failing all along the way with my son? Well, it makes perfect sense when we understand that it is not about what we are doing. It is 100% about who we are being, how we are showing up, that energy that we are bringing into our relationship that matters the most. And so my tip for you as we end this podcast is to really reflect on that, to really reflect and even write it down, right? Pick a situation that's happening in your life. Maybe there was a rough school pickup today, or getting ready for school this morning was rough, or you got into an argument with your son or your daughter or your spouse or your boss, right? Pick a situation that happened in your day today and break it down into those three categories: be, do, and have. And really reflect on, are you being in a way that matches your goal for yourself, your goal for your relationships, your goal for whatever matches that circumstance, right? Really reflect on it. My coach always says, be a compassionate scientist. Don't beat yourself up, right? You're learning new concepts here, and I am so grateful that you're here hanging out with me to learn these concepts, because I know how incredibly powerful they are and can be if you really implement them into your everyday in those relationships that matter most. But reflect on that situation, be a compassionate scientist, and ask yourself where you could shift things a little bit, because you can. It is totally up to you. Nobody outside of you has any power over who you are being, just you. So, as we wrap up here today, do a little work on you this time. I think it can be so incredibly powerful, and I cannot wait to hear what's coming up for you. I would love your feedback. Please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Thank you. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.